All right, Sean, you've driven all the way here, and you've dressed up like a complete goofus to do something to me, I think.
I hate this movie.
Well, I'm pretty sure I'm going to hate it too, and I think that's the discussion that we had like months ago that I didn't really want to watch it. You told me I should, and we should talk about it. So here we are.
I believe that what you said was you watched something like the first 5-10 minutes of it, and you already had a lot of complaints.
Yeah.
And I said, hold on. You don't even know what to complain about.
Yeah.
You need to watch the whole thing.
So here you are. You're going to subject this to me. For people who don't know who this is my cousin, Sean, and he hates me apparently. Let's watch War of the Rohirrim, shall we?
Let's do it.
Okay. So we just got done watching War of the Rohirrim, Lord of the Rings, War of the Rohirrim. I have many thoughts. I know you have many thoughts. I will start by saying, as we talked about in the intro, I did watch a portion of this film. I thought it was about 25% of it. It was probably more like 10. And you know the saying of I was on a plane and I was watching a movie and it was so bad I still walked out. I was kind of almost there. Like it was. Here's what I will say about it. I turned it off at about that 15 to 20 minute mark because I would rather do anything else at that point on a plane. And in retrospect, after watching the whole film, it got better, but the best it got to was just kind of mediocre.
Very much so.
And there was a lot of it that there were some moments, some shining moments that were actually really good, and they were almost always when it actually pulled from the actual source material.
Yeah.
So really anything to do with Helm, Hammer, Hand.
Not while I live. Do you hear me?
Frankly, the past 20 minutes have been better than all the rest of the film.
Shield stands.
Maybe because it's really focused on him this whole time.
Yeah, exactly. The actual main character of the story, what did I say? You know, it's not called Hera's Deep. It could have been 15 minutes long.
Yeah, like a short film or something.
If it was a short film with real human beings in it, it would have been good. I think fans could make a better movie.
Yeah.
So I have a fundamental problem with this film that I don't want to say that like it tainted me coming into it. It's just a really big problem that for the last 20 years, I used as a standard, as a concept of something that embodied the entire notion of wrongness with the world. Like something that just epitomized doing things wrong. My description would be if they made a Tolkien anime. It was literally how I described the ultimate way to ruin and not do something right was you can't make Tolkien into an anime because they're diametrically opposed in philosophy, in storytelling, in what you even consider a fight to be.
Yeah.
And in character and character development and the way that things look in a world sense. Tolkien is something on the exact opposite side of anything anime. And then they did it, and it wasn't good. And I was right, but what's happened is everything I've ever not wanted to see happen in the world to the things that I love, this was the last nail in the coffin. I am doomed to being a bitter old man that hates everything and hates everybody because this movie exists, because not only did they make a Blade Runner anime that I hate, but then they took Tolkien away from me.
Everybody's so generically anime, it's awful.
So I don't necessarily have a problem with anime styling in general, but it does feel like a weird. So this feels like the same way I would argue, like the Animatrix and Halo Legends, where it was like they want to anime everything, but it doesn't really work. Like you could maybe argue it kind of could work for the Matrix, but like Halo, you know, this like it. The style seems to put it at odds a little bit. It's kind of. First, they came for Star Wars, and I said nothing. Then they came for Star Trek, and I said nothing. Then they came for Halo and Wheel of Time, and I said nothing. And then they came for Lord of the Rings, and there was no one to speak for me. Yeah, it's a really tough time to be a fan of anything.
Anything at all.
And I actually about 5 years ago, I had a video planned for my channel, and the theme of the video was going to be the fandoms that didn't defend their media, and how thankfully, for the most part, the Tolkien fandom has been a staunch vanguard against that. And I was going to speak towards, look, here is what happened to Star Wars. And Star Wars has all this potential that is just wasted. And here is Star Trek that has all this potential that gets wasted. But no one can really touch Tolkien. And I will still argue they can't, because they have to just fabricate the most wild stuff, and they have to come at it with such weird angles. There is a lot of Tolkien media I have not watched at this point. I have not watched any of the Rings of Power.
Oh, God.
I just couldn't bring myself to subject myself to that. But
shockingly boring. I don't know how. I mean, a large amount of effort by Amazon went into, and this is the thing that really confuses me, making their Tolkien series look like it fits in with not their Tolkien series.
Yeah.
It's not. This is not the Amazon show is not part of the cinematic universe of Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
It's just somebody else that decided to make it look like it was. And then the worst casting. Terrible casting, and every show is just people walking and talking. Walking and talking.
So here's the thing. People walking and talking, if done well, be very good. You and I, before we even started screening War of the Rohirrim or any of that, we talked a bit about The Haunting of Hill House.
Oh, God,
right?
so good.
Such a good show. And when you look at any of Mike Flanagan's work, so much of what makes those good is not the horror, not the effects, although those are all legitimately good, but it's very often the monologues. It's very often literally the people standing there and talking with a slow zoom on them for like 7 minutes long. You can do it if it's done right. And so, and I think that's kind of how there's a lot of things to talk about with War of the Rohirrim. Like, obviously we could talk about Rings of Power. Maybe one day you'll subject me to that.
I had to stop it myself. I got to like episode 3. I'm like, I just can't do this. It's not worth it.
There's a part of me that's wanted to watch it just to see what some of the design, like, could have been really good. But with War of the Rohirrim, the reason we're here talking, there's a lot of like elements to it that you can almost section out and talk about in and of themselves separate. And I want to take the anime part first, because I think if we attack that and talk about the technical aspects and set that aside after we're done talking about it, because I think that the mediocrity is actually not coming from that, in my opinion. So there's a technical aspect to this, which is the animation is janky to say the least. And I say that as someone who doesn't watch a ton of anime, especially not a lot of modern anime, but I love Studio Ghibli. I grew up watching Akira and Perfect Blue and a lot of these really wild animes that at this point they're 30 to 40 years old, and their style of animation and their ability to execute on a vision is still not surpassed in many cases. And I think I could do I'm going to do a comparison. Princess Mononoke and the weird tentacle things to weird tentacle monster that comes out of Tolkien's universe, which is the Watcher, that like says on the fact it shouldn't be there, but just like the animation itself, it was done better, right? And there was one really shocking moment of really good animation for no reason that looked quasi-rotoscope.
Yeah.
I think you had mentioned
There
the
are a couple of moments that look rotoscope.
I didn't notice them,
Yeah.
but there's one that really
Yeah,
stood out because it was very much in the center of the frame.
Get out of here!
Why is he so well animated in that one section?
Okay, so there's some really, really inconsistent animation, and there are these parts that I swear to God they're rotoscoped.
That looked like it was
I
rotoscoped.
swear they rotoscoped some stuff.
Yeah, that felt like a Ralph Bakshi level.
Yeah,
of
no,
like,
there's going to be a point in the future where she walks down like a ramp, and you're gonna like, is this wizards or something? Is this like
that was it was suddenly so well
So
animated. He
fluid.
cut the arrow out of the sky, and then like the way he moved.
I think they rotoscoped some of this.
Well, it showed.
Yeah. And yeah, it's so inconsistent that it jumps
notice
out
it,
at you
yeah.
because it's so not like the other animation.
Yeah. There was just one really astute animator that day.
Yeah.
Just like
This guy just
they approved his
putting
overtime.
in, yeah, I was gonna say putting in the overtime.
The backgrounds are frankly, a different art style. It is a CG environment where they would pan the camera and it's at a different frame rate. And that really makes every bad decision in the animation really stand out.
Yeah.
And I would say, you can do that well. If you look at Into the Spider-Verse, you have all these competing frame rates.
Oh,
it was done intentionally.
Yeah, but I mean, it's not. I feel like the Spider-Verse intentional low frame rates. I mean, you know what it is? It's like I was mentioning before. If you're going to do something in a whole bunch of random different styles, like The Amazing World of Gumball, it works because they're literally supposed to be done in different styles. It's part of the character of it. Spider-Verse, very much so, is a multiverse, and part of the joke of the whole thing is, look,
Reflected.
these are different things from different pieces of media being done appropriately in their different pieces of media, like Who Framed Roger Rabbit? Those are toons, these are humans. We expect toon stuff from toons, human stuff from humans, and they accomplish that in the Spider-Verse. But this is supposed to be coherent.
Yes, and the lack of the coherency between what is ostensibly like the cell shaded animation and this kind of CG background. And it's not even that they couldn't use those two, but they needed to match and they needed to feel like they were in the same physical space, and very often they weren't. So there's a technical failing, and my limited research, my understanding is there were something like 60 studios that were involved in this animation. Let's be real upfront with it. The purpose of this film, I'm pretty sure, is rights retainment.
Yeah.
So it gets placed in the same category as the Roger Corman Fantastic Four movie,
Right.
in terms of like they needed to kind of put something together. And one of the advantages of animation is you don't have to build sets, you don't have to build costumes, you just draw it, right?
Yeah. It's still very expensive,
The choice,
but yeah.
But the choice to go to anime was
Yeah.
over, say, going to like a Rankin Bass style.
Need an offer for your daughters, huh?
Wouldn't it have been wonderful if they actually did this in the style of Rankin and Bass?
It would have been so
Do
good.
you deny it?
Like then it would actually feel cohesive.
Yeah,
as well.
like
My daughter marries.
Freka
Say it is.
is drawn with some character,
Yeah,
and everybody else is like generic anime.
like you can kind of
Yeah,
like Helm, kind of
Yeah,
like okay, I can see it.
he's got it too. But that's just, you know why? Because they're old men. Old
Yeah.
men get to have character. Young people are all baby-faced non-humans.
Yeah. You talk about coherency
Which
in a
is-
Tolkien universe.
Is technically a proto-anime. I mean, those people went on to become Studio Ghibli, but the character designs were not in anime style.
Yes,
and that's
and-
the important part.
And that style would somehow feel more grounded in I call it our modern view of like what is a Tolkien universe. We kind of accept Rankin and Bass. Maybe in some ways you could even except like the Ralph Bakshi style. Although I was never a big
Let's not
fan.
even talk about it. Let's just not talk
Yeah,
about it.
but like you could choose a style that would work. So there's the problem with the anime. There's a problem with you mentioned that like everyone kind of looks the same.
I mean, that's the anime thing. If they're young, they're just the same character model with a different hair, and that's how you. But let me. I think there is still a really big problem with it being anime. Period. With it being anime, and that is, I kept saying over the entire course of the movie, no one shows any emotion.
Yeah.
No one furrows a brow. Whether they're sad or happy, they just talk staring into space. It is the generalized anime style problem. If these characters, they could have made these characters have character visually. They could have given them personality visually that we then brought in as part of their characters. So realistically, a lot of the meh of this comes from the fact that they didn't present us with things that looked like they had depth. They just gave us cutouts on popsicle sticks and expect us to be emotionally involved. So I do think that there is a flaw in the fundamental style that they used, that they made a mistake in their art direction.
Yeah.
Traitor! My father will see you hang for this.
Does she have Sting?
I was about to say the same thing. Is she holding Sting? What is going on?
Fair. I cannot disagree. When I try to be very objective and say, well, there are elements of the art style that I can appreciate. For example, the main character of Hera, she has a certain kind of Celtic knotwork braid in her hair. That's a character element. It's like if you had that and you had a different art style, and you styled everything to not look like it was walking out of Attack on Titan.
Exactly.
Versus, like an actual, call it Norse style clothing. You could make it work maybe.
There was something I really didn't like about this scene that I didn't pick up until now watching it, and it's that I hate her outfit.
I remember a lot of people complaining about her outfit from the trailer.
Yeah.
And being like, what is this?
It just looks futuristic and not...
It looks like Attack on Titan.
And it's too white. Why?
Hey, the previous scenes where she's wearing the green dress,
green,
like, why not do that?
Yeah.
Why not?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
But consider this, even Attack on Titan, as serious as it's trying to be as a show, still uses Japanese comic book derivative shorthand to portray to you, the viewer, that someone is having an emotion.
Yeah.
You're going to get teardrops, you're going to get the little forehead thing, you're going to get the crying eyes stuff. And without that, when you take that away, when you take out the goofy, I'm going to call them the Japanese wild takes, is what they are. When you take out the wild takes, you end up with just nothing.
The mouth movements are weird. Really weird.
Well, what's weird about it to me is it almost feels more forgivable in anime that's dubbed off of Japanese.
Well, yeah.
Which also sets a certain dialogue structure they use to match as best they can.
Yeah.
This one feels like they didn't know what the characters were saying, so they animated it, and then they just determined what was going to be said afterwards in a really weird way. How much of that is modern anime? Do you
It's
think?
very
because I go back to like Akira.
I completely agree that the 70s and the 80s, there was a lot more time and effort spent into giving people expression and character in the animation itself.
Yeah.
Nowadays, it is like it's just like stamped out. Like, I mean, there's both Korean and Japanese animation. They both look like pretty much the same thing. Now, I will say there's one show right now, and it's so good that Netflix got the rights, and that's Dan to Dan. And Dan to Dan is a throwback to 1990s anime, and it is, you can see it in the art direction. It just puts things at camera angles that are weird. It's highly animated, and though it still has all of its goofy moments, its goofy anime wild takes, it's got character that I haven't seen for the last 20 or 30 years. Just throwing that out there. And there's, I mean, I got rid of really being interested in anime in like the 1990s. I decided to go back and read the great works of science fiction literature and go back to the movies. And when I realized, all this is derivative, why don't I read the original? But, I'll still watch something stupid like Delicious in Dungeon while I'm doing work. So I'm watching some of this modern stuff, and it's dumb, it's throwaway. It's all disposable. And that's the problem is I can get it on Crunchyroll, start watching any series, and it's just disposable. Schlock. But that's kind of the thing. Back in the 80s and 90s, we were getting the curated content being imported. So we only saw the best of the best, what they thought that American audiences would actually latch onto. Now we get the equivalent of daytime soap opera in animated format because they make so much animation. So anyway,
the idea of something being curated.
Yes.
I mean, I think this is also just the outcropping of streaming media at this point. It's all about content generation over some sort of quality, right? Like when things had to be presented in a theater or on television, and that was it. You're going to get that time slice, and the ads were going to pay for it, and it had to be good. Otherwise, the viewers wouldn't come back. You wouldn't sell the tickets in the theater, and that was your chance.
They took a lot of time in this story doing things that didn't really get from point A to point B, when what they could have been doing was developing any one of these characters so we cared about them.
Yeah. Like, again, I know the outcome of the characters from the source material.
Yeah.
So I at least know who they are.
I mean, I don't know. What happened to the unnamed princess?
Well,
Yeah.
we saw in the plot hole on the
yeah,
screen
yeah.
that we had to fill in with the story.
Yeah.
I believe her name is Hella.
Oh, hello. Or Hera. Or
No, they said Hella.
Yeah.
They've been saying it, even though it's Hera.
Yeah.
It had to be good, and
Yeah.
there wasn't a willingness. And this is where I guess we
Yeah.
diverge from the anime topic and talk
Yeah,
more
yeah.
about just there's now a social aspect of this, which is people are more willing to take risks or alter things away from what would be popular in a good way.
Yeah.
And look, I will always say there's an argument against popularity.
Yeah.
Above
Well, that's
all.
what's ruined everything.
Well, yeah. Well,
That's
and my
like-
argument against popularity
Yeah.
is there is a thing called the Twilight series, and they're highly popular. It doesn't mean they're good.
Right, exactly,
So I don't
yeah.
want to confuse the two, but the idea that you're going to create a media that's going to attract attention and get
Yeah.
people to want to watch it, and you're making a Lord of the Rings property. You're going to tell the story of what is, I think, maybe 3 pages in the appendices.
Yeah, it's
very
nothing.
short, and it's the story of Helm Hammerhand. And you want to approach it. How are you going to approach it? There is 1,000 different ways you could try to tell that story. And I'm not going to even say it the way they chose is in and of itself a bad decision. It's just it lays a foundation that is maybe a little bit shaky.
Yeah.
And that is, okay, we're going to tell it from the standpoint of Helm's daughter, which she's unnamed, but she is key to the plot because she is the instigating reason for the conflict of that story. Because it is true, Helm says, I don't want to marry her off to Wolf, right? That is it. And then he kills Freka with a punch, right?
Yeah.
So that is correct, and you can use that as a framing, and you put it from that viewpoint. But where it goes wrong very quickly is instead of developing all these characters you need to develop the character of Helm and the 2 sons of Helm, Hera's brothers. Give Hera a name, fine. Develop her as a character. Make sure that her relationship with all that works. You need to develop the character of Freka and Wolf. Fine. You need to develop the character, and I can't remember exactly how to pronounce the name, but the cousin who becomes the new king of Rohan. That's all this, by the way, from the source material, right?
Yeah.
It's all from the source material.
The bodies, they're gone. The rain, it's eaten them. It's eaten them.
They're actually doing it. It's kind of great. Like this is becoming a bright point.
Yeah.
And you're telling me all my hopes and dreams are about to get ruined.
Not all of them. They're just gonna just take some of them away, okay?
any sign of Hera? No.
I'm at least appreciative that they're doing this part.
Yeah.
Because I could really easily see where they wouldn't. You develop all that out and you build those relationships and you find a way to craft the story. And the story is very brief, but it is Helm doesn't want Wolf, Freka's son, to marry his daughter, unnamed. They take it outside. He lands a punch that kills Freka. In the actual text, it kind of suggests that it's just straight up Helm murdering Freka. There isn't this whole, like, they're having a bit of a duel.
Yeah.
And then that leads to war at a time where there is also a long winter and famine.
This is no rabble of wild men. These men are well trained and well armed.
I mean, it didn't seem like it from the way that those guys took down their entire encampment's worth of guards.
Yeah.
Like, with headshots of every one. They kind of looked like a bunch of rabble that weren't very well trained.
Yeah.
Taken by constant surprise. Why these shots are too accurate? It only could have been done by stormtroopers. Little did we know, stormtroopers.
Helm loses his sons. He goes legitimately insane. The suggestion of the actual text is he goes insane and he begins killing everyone with his bare hands and cannibalizing them. That's a suggested, not even a suggesting, like they straight up say, we think he's eating them. And they say it in the film as well, but they play on it a little bit differently. And then they find him basically out there in the frozen wasteland. If you did all that and you put the framing around it and that's where it ended, and you kind of told that story, and you brought the cousin, the nephew of Helm, into kingship, and you said that's the end of the story, it would have been probably fine, and you could tell that from Hera's point of view. You could tell a story that's interesting, but what they did was they added all this other stuff to it. It's like, well, first of all, we have to frame this not as Helm's story. It is Helm's story. They're going to frame it as Hera's story, so much so that they straight up say in the narration, this story is not told and you will never hear it in Songs of Old. So now let's tell it. And we even found the literal plot hole in the story. It was right there on screen.
But I don't recognize that one.
See, there's a big hole where the stories that weren't told were.
I mean, that's the plot hole.
That's the plot hole. We found it.
You can't. Now we can fix it.
No mind, no twigs in your head. One could almost mistake you.
And even then, like I'm gonna play devil's advocate here. Even then, you could defend it. I'll go somewhere. There is a letter that Tolkien wrote where he talked about how, he's building this world, and someday other people will tell stories within it. He was actually open to that. But what he was not open to was people changing the stories he had already told. And so you introduce this character that now you're pulling in all these other things to tell the story. You're pulling in the Eagles. Why are you pulling in the Eagles? You're pulling in the Haradrim, the Easterlings, the Mumakil, the Olifants. You're pulling in the Watcher, and they become member berries. Like, do you remember this other film that was really good by a guy named Peter Jackson?
Yep.
Like, do you remember that? That was really cool.
Just watching from the freaking snuck up. The freaking elephant snuck up on her.
That's the Walking Dead zombie thing. Suddenly zombie, or suddenly Mumakil. Even when they pulled in Isengard, like, it's appropriate to the setting in the appendices and the history, but they didn't explore it, like, at all. And it was just kind of like, it felt, even though they could have justified it, it felt more like a member berry thing.
I think they just wanted a Christopher Lee
cameo
at the
even
end.
though, which they did, right?
Yeah.
Okay, we're in Isengard right now, which is accurate to the timeline. Like, the Dunlendings were in Isengard. This is before Saruman took over, hundreds of years before the story of the Lord of the Rings, right? They do nothing with this. Maybe they come back to it later in the film, I don't know, but like, They do nothing with this location. It might as well have not been Isengard. Because none of it feels like Isengard yet, and it's a brief moment where they're like, oh yeah, this is Isengard, by the way. And then they're done with it. Very weird. Very weird decision making.
Someone bold enough to kidnap a king.
Do something with the location if you're going to make it Isengard.
Yeah.
Stay hidden. Keep the horses at
And why is it bold?
I do not return by the hour.
Wait.
It's not.
Yeah.
Not really. Like,
I have a plan.
according to the story, it's like time of famine.
Right.
Gondor has retreated from taking control of Isengard. Dunlending's moved in. Keep in mind, this is actually relatively far away from the core part of Rohan. So it's like, no one really cared.
Mm-hmm.
It was an abandoned outpost,
castle,
right?
yeah.
Like, it was Gondor, it was Númenorian and then Gondorian. And Gondor basically said, screw it. We're done with it. Too far away, we don't care. So even if there was like an intent to do something interesting by making it Isengard, it just comes off feeling like member berries again.
Yeah.
Like you can't, there's all these other locations you could have chosen to do something with.
Yeah. Let's make it a recognizable monument.
Gondor is not coming.
Weird that their fire is green, but, you know.
The idea, by the way, that Isengard is also like all already chopped down trees and everything is also really weird.
It should be really forested, like old Ent forest forested.
Yeah. Guess they forgot that part.
I find the swords that these people keep drawing to be really weird.
They're designed after something called a falx.
Yeah.
The inward curved, like sharpened edge is the inward curve of the blade. It's swords made out of farming implements. I actually have one.
Right, I mean, his dagger was...
Yeah.
But the one that he just pulled, I thought it looked weird. Yeah, see... it looks like they're using orcish swords from the movies.
Fair enough, yeah.
That's my problem.
Yeah,
It looks
yeah.
like they're using orc swords.
And again, maybe that could be that's a little bit anachronistic to the actual history, but okay, fine, it's passable, right? Frankly, a lot of the call it political headwinds that were happening at the time, I actually didn't see as much as I thought I would. Hera straight up just gets kidnapped at one point, can't put up a fight. Most fights she's in, she gets knocked to the ground. The two one-on-one fights she has help from a horse.
Yeah.
She should have said to the horse, "Thanks for pitching in."
Oh, yeah, a little humor. This movie could have used a little humor.
And then the last fight, she's never really the one who actually gets the killing blow until the really far end. And you know what? That's fine. So even her, like, there have been many of the Mary Sues that have occurred, and you get a lot. I didn't find her character to be like that nearly as much as I expected.
They specifically said that bad things are happening, so she can't go out alone. To make a giant and huge scene where she ends up alone in the forest. They could have just skipped all that, had her go out in the forest alone, and get ganked by this guy.
Yeah. Or come up with another scenario that isn't member berries. She could just pull the bag off her head. They focused so much on her that by the time Helm's story was over, I actually turned to you and I was like, so this is going to be over soon, right? And it was still like halfway through the movie. There was still it felt longer than the ending of the original trilogy of Lord of the Rings by the time it got to the epilogue part. So I feel like that just ended up being a bit of a failure in that they really spent too much time with member berries and not enough time with character development or making me care. And again, you've got the anime style that undercuts all that because now you're not getting the furrowing of the brow. The animation definitely felt rushed in some parts. And it just, you couldn't connect with any of the characters really. And so you would see the story beats that you'd be like, that could have been really impactful if I actually cared. You know, Helm putting Hera inside of the deep and closing the door and turning around, like that was like, that could have been really cool. It didn't play out as being really cool.
The gate is stopped!
Is he gonna punch the gate? Is he gonna? Okay.
Yes. This is how I solve all of my problems.
I thought they were really gonna do that for a moment. They might still. I don't know. Do it. I want it. I want the cheesiness. I'm helping.
It's a good thing that an old woman and girl's strength versus the guy that just ripped apart a frost troll is really what made the freaking difference.
It was so much longer than it needed to be. And I think that missing the beats on their storytelling really undercut what could have been impactful moments. Even the freaking just closing the door. We gotta have a whole conversation at the door? All right, I'm bored again. Like it
should have been
just-
stoic. It should have
yes,
been put her in, close the door, keep the eye contact.
Hey,
Boom.
just goes on this whole monologue about how she can rule the kingdom and she's got the strength and
Which
you've got the touch.
which
You've
I said
got
at the time, it's like he
power.
says all that, and what is the actual outcome?
Yeah.
It's not
No,
her.
No, it's not
her cousin.
Yeah, she leaves. She freaking bails.
Yeah. I'm okay with this, though. See, I'm okay with this.
Yeah.
I need you. Rohan still needs you.
No, Hera. They need you. You must lead them.
Or more specifically, your cousin who becomes king later.
I got a message from this wizard. You probably never heard of him.
Yeah, this is one of the other things I really hate. It happened in the Hobbit films more than it needed to, and it happened in this one, which is it has to tie in, right? The Hobbit trilogy, I have a lot to say about it. We're not going to say it here.
Not its name.
But the ring is the only thing that should connect it to the Lord of the Rings story. It's really it.
Yeah.
Gollum, the ring, that kind of relationship. But you don't need to necessarily build all this other stuff. And granted, again, that's a thing. But this one, like, there's a conversation of orcs. They're looking for, why was that necessary? We know this is Lord of the Rings. We don't need that addition.
And why do they use this frost troll thing to undercut the impact of Helm himself? Like, turns out it wasn't him going and murdering all those guys, I guess. It was really the frost troll. Or maybe it was both at the same time and they were just easily confused because one looks like a giant monster helm. Like
I was really excited. I got really excited in that moment where I was like, they're actually doing it. They're actually taking the character of Helm from the king to the crazy man who murders everyone and eats them. And I even was like, I'm so excited. And you're like, they're going to undercut that a bit. And like, you don't need to undercut that. Like, this is great. This is actually straight from the story. Like, could they not really focused more
on this part,
on like all the interesting parts about the story? Like the whole thing is he goes completely nuts. He resorts to cannibalism, and he's like out there killing everybody like a shade.
Yeah, and they're gonna throw a wrench into your hopes.
What? What do you mean?
I mean, it's gonna be weird.
Okay.
I mean, look, they're gonna integrate some of that. Okay. They're just gonna throw a couple more things in.
Right.
That you're like, why? Why even do it? Oh wait, member berries.
Fear took hold of Wolfsmen.
You don't need to add all this stuff to talk about the ring. You don't need to send Hera off to go meet with Gandalf for some reason. You don't need any of that. You strip that out. You strip that out. You strip out the eagles. No reason to have the Muma kill at all.
We didn't even need the Legend of the Shield Maidens. Because why? I mean, it didn't honestly come to play except that she whacks Wolf in the end with a shield.
Yeah.
And it's never firmly established that I remember that she was even trained in using them. She just had this lady around who was the last shield maiden. There was never like, and she practices in secret the ancient ways of the now forgotten shield maidens. Like, where did that even come from?
Yeah, and I think it's adding complexity to a story that doesn't really need it.
Yeah.
Like, if you take the character of Helm, you make him insane, you make him have his ending like
Yeah.
he's supposed to have, even the kind of the way they execute it, and you just tie the characters to make you care about them, it would be
It
be
was
great.
also a little weird that he's getting up and just murderating people after being down for the count and feverish from having like 5 arrows stuck in him. It's like
Yeah.
bedridden for all of this time, and then he just up and ghosts.
I was trying to protect you.
You can't tear Wolf's army apart one man at a time.
I mean, yeah, you can. I mean, it's been working so much. I mean, between him and the cave troll, or
I should
whatever,
have listened to you.
that kind of looks like him. So I guess that's what they did, is they made it that they think it's him, but it's really the frost troll eating people and beating them up. You see what I mean? You see what I mean when they did there?
Yeah. I don't like that.
They don't really announce it that way, but it's kind of implied, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
When I was little, you told me you only fail when you stop trying. You never gave up.
Well, I mean, you only fail when you stop trying. I mean,
Platitudes.
that's kind of like it's always the last place you look.
Yeah. Well, I always look,
Technically correct.
after I find the thing, I always look one more place
and make it
yeah.
the second to last
Yep,
place.
That's right.
Yeah, just to spite,
Just
just
to spite the
logic and rationalism.
It's the only way back in.
Screw you, reason. It will be the second to last place that I look.
The penultimate place that I looked.
Let none say that I am bound by science and reason. The laws of logic.
Once you introduce a bunch of
Yeah.
arrows into him,
Yeah.
he is supposed to be this like incredibly strong,
Yeah.
hale person who can go out and murderate people with his
Yeah,
bare hands. Like
yeah,
that is part of
yeah.
the story. So I can forgive that. There's a lot of weird things that they choose that add time that take away from character development. And again, like I wanted Helm to be the character. When they first announced this, way back,
Yeah.
they said, oh, it's gonna be the story of Helm Hammerhand. We're gonna get Brian Cox to voice him, which they had,
Yeah.
right? Like, okay, I'm legitimately excited. That's a great idea. It's gonna be anime. And then we get to where it's like, oh, and it's really not, it's not Helm's story, it's Hera's story. Helm is a background character in his own story, but yet the strongest parts of this movie were the moments where it was focused on Helm, with maybe the exception of his actual end frozen form, which was look. Have you ever seen the movie The 13th Warrior?
Yeah. Great movie.
For those of you who don't, spoilers here, so ignore it for the next 5 minutes. It's the story of Beowulf, told in a really interesting way. It is. It's legitimately when Crichton wrote the book, it was based on. It's called Eaters of the Dead, and like the idea of Grendel was like this tribe of cannibalistic. Anyway, it's the story of Beowulf, and in the end of the film, Beowulf dies after this long battle, and how does he die? He's sitting in a chair, like he's ruling over the place, but he's dead. And I kind of expected that to be how they would find Helm, like sitting guard, or like you said, kneeling on the ground but still up, right? No, he was like
He-Man.
a statue,
He-Man
He-Man,
pose, yeah.
holding the popcorn bucket hammer aloft. And I just, how did that happen?
The physics are a little disconcerting.
And the whole thing just like suddenly you take what could be a really awesome moment and you just turn it into a
Cheesy.
joke. It's cheesy, yeah.
Oh, winter's over. He punched it. He punched winter right in his winter face, and now it's spring.
That is how we found him. Frozen in place. Still standing guard. Before the gates of God.
He's
His will unbroken.
But why?
His knees.
Why like that?
yeah, I mean, it's a really weird way to get slowly frozen.
It really, to me, it just comes down to character development, really more than anything. You change the animation style or not. Do a better job with the animation, convincing me that these characters care about each other,
it part of the animation problem too is what I in my headcanon call the Batman the Animated Series issue. I love Batman the Animated Series. I love its style, but the animation is terrible a lot.
Yeah.
And it's always terrible when they are animating something that doesn't need to be animated. Like, one of the great things about anime is that they know when to animate and when not to. When people are talking, it's not important. When people are fighting, make it detailed. Great. They put their efforts into where it needs to be. Every time Commissioner Gordon is in a car and he's talking and he's turning his head and they don't know how to make their style actually rotate in 3D, and you get that disconcerting, like, this movie did that.
Yeah.
This movie did that a lot, and they kept having people, I am talking at the camera right now.
Yeah, there's a
Why
moment
are
where
you-"
Frecco was
Yeah,
having his thing,
yeah.
and he had these really exaggerated, and it was a combination of low frame rate and like the lips not matching and the shape morphing in weird ways.
Yeah.
And then there was the one moment with the old
The
hag
old
lady,
yeah.
where it straight, I mean, it literally turned into Legend of Zelda CDI.
Yeah.
It was so off-putting.
Yeah.
Was the only way I could really put it. And these are things that
It
pull
looked
you out
like
of
a
the moment.
scanner darkly.
Yeah.
Again, it looked like weirdly rotoscoped,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
it didn't match up.
Worse.
Weird.
But
Who says it?
what is this
Oh,
animation?
yeah, what is going on?
What is happening? That was bizarre looking.
They should have just done like
That
a
was
Ren
like
and Stimpy cut.
That was like the animation from the Zelda CDI games.
Yes, it was. It was
I'm
not
so
very
hungry I
good.
could eat an Octorok.
Sorry, Link. I can't give credit. Come back when you're a little, richer.
But even minor characters, when anybody was having a discussion, look, normally, anime, we're having a conversation, I'm doing this, my lips are moving, sometimes they'll pan to the swords on the wall and hear the voices, and nobody has to draw anything. But in this, I'd be like, so anyway, what I was saying is that what we need to do, and I'm like, just stop drawing him. Just stop drawing them moving because you're doing it badly.
Yeah.
And it takes you out of your suspension of disbelief.
And take all that
Yeah.
effort and put it into
Put it
the
in
fight
the
scenes.
fights, a little lip syncing.
Put it into the facial expressions. Yeah, totally. And that's the thing. Like, if it was truly bad, it would
Yeah.
almost be better for it. It's the fact that it's all just coming off as mediocre.
It's consistently inconsistent.
Yeah.
It's just it is mediocre because it is consistent. Like that's the problem. Is its consistency of inconsistency.
Yeah. And there were also moments that were just legitimately confusing.
Yeah.
We after the screening went back and rewatched the scene because we both got confused. And you've seen it before.
This is the second
you were
time I saw it, and I
confused.
forgot how it even worked in it. Yeah, I'd forgotten the movie.
It looked totally like the eagle grabbed Wolf and took him
Just took him away.
And then he was suddenly standing there again, and I was like, wait, what just happened?
They could have at least shown him getting back up.
Did he even get knocked down?
Well, he ducks sort of out of the way.
Is that what happened? See,
Yeah. We'd have to go back like for the 3 frames in which the eagle swoops down and he goes, or whatever.
Whole time. Could have just done it the whole time.
I mean, if there's one lesson we've learned about this, the eagle should have taken the ring to Mount Doom. Wait,
He's wearing the armor.
no, wait. What did the eagle take?
That wolf, it just grabbed him,
Well, he was just there.
wasn't it? Wait,
What just happened?
wait,
So confused.
wait. Was he? I thought there was just some rando.
We're gonna rewind it a
Yeah,
moment.
yeah.
I'm very confused.
Yeah.
That is a giant moon.
Mm-hmm. That's an Uncle Fester man.
Because there's Wolf right there, right? Wait.
Our people do not call this keep the Hornburg anymore. Hannah!
Oh yeah. So what did the eagle grab?
They have named it for it.
What happened?
What just happened? Did it just grab a random guy that was there? I don't...
I could have sworn the eagle
They
grabbed him.
Yeah.
I feel like I just went.
Yeah, no.
This movie just
Am
gaslit
I
me.
crazy? What just happened?
Yeah, it's something about just like it just feels unplanned, which is weird because it's animated. Like you have to plan out all this
Yeah,
stuff.
you really, really have to. I mean, you storyboard these things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Committee. The whole thing just feels so made by committee.
and I again I get it. Sometimes the way these things have to get made, you have to put in all this stuff. When the trailer came out, and I saw the very opening shot of the trailer was live action scenes from the Lord of the Rings films. That was the trailer. If you don't,
I don't
if you
remember this.
The
No.
trailer, the first
Kind of
trailer,
ignored it.
it was like Lord of the Rings. It was like, oh, I remember this is good.
Yeah, all right, yeah.
And it was like, you remember this thing? Well, you're not gonna get that, right? That's kind of how the trailer came off, and it was just kind of like, why would you do that to yourself? Like you Barney Fifed, right? And I get that they're trying to tie it in, and there's probably rights things, and there's a business side of this. But I don't know whose business you're going to get, right? And this goes down to, again, the same problem of fandom and what people put up with. It happened to Star Wars. It happened to Star Trek. The slow decay of the IP in pop media, like the source material, we can still go back to it and enjoy it. But, Star Wars went from 3 films that were just
very good. Yeah,
like
very,
everyone acknowledged these were just great. Even if you weren't a fan, you knew that they were cultural touchstones. And by the time they tried to revitalize it for the prequels, it was kind of like, this is where we're going. Okay, I guess. And they were never very good.
Yeah.
Let's be real. They were never good. And then over time, especially after it got bought up by Disney and they started producing TV shows, and also it just kept going further and further downhill in the quality. And the crazy thing to me is that you could literally do anything in that universe, almost more so than Star Trek. You could do almost anything in Star Wars. You could make a rom-com in the Star Wars universe. You could make a straight up like.
Well, I mean, they've done that with Skeleton Crew. They made a fucking Goonies style kids show, which I like. I feel like the consistency is just like either like the best or the worst.
And granted, I have not watched a lot of Star Wars stuff these days. I never was that big a fan in the first place. I was more of a Star Trek person.
Guy too, but it's been a part of my childhood. I acknowledge I like it. I'm not choosing a side there. They're just very different. One's a little more hard sci-fi. One's a little bit more soft sci-fi.
But the question comes to me. The question comes into it. Can you make a Star Wars?
Like I'm in the movie.
Can you make a Star Wars show or movie that doesn't have lightsabers, Jedi, stormtroopers, the Empire?
Right.
And the reality is, as far as I'm aware, they've never done it.
Yeah.
It always has to go back to it. The Mandalorian was the closest it got, and it started that direction, and then they were like, oh, no, we don't want to do, put a Baby Yoda in, right?
No.
And then that set it on a path of mediocrity. And Star Trek, similarly, it's like this slow decay over time that produces less and less quality things, and I'm afraid that's where we're going. We had the Lord of the Rings trilogy that Peter Jackson made.
Yeah.
Then we had the Hobbit films that were like, I don't even understand what happened here.
It was a money grab. Nobody wanted to do it. Del Toro was supposed to. He couldn't. That would have been crazy and weird and dark, and I would have loved it probably. And Jackson didn't want to do them, and that's all it was. Nobody wanted to do those movies. There were people making a movie they didn't want to make, and it shows. Yeah. I mean, it's just cheap, and they're just doing it as fast and dirty as possible.
And the things they add on, what of value do they add?
Nothing. But you know what? I blame Jackson for this in the first place, because as much as I really have a hard time imagining someone doing a better job in reality, he also just put in stuff that I didn't like in the first place in the Lord of the Rings movies. The freaking way that Legolas is just this freaking Cirque du Soleil, freaking crazy shield surfing.
Is this guy about to Legolas this thing?
As long as it isn't Cirque du Soleil too much. God, that ruins the end of those movies for me. And I could just take it out. It's just bad CG. Can we just cut those scenes? I really want a remaster where we cut the bad CG. So much CG was so good in those movies, and then
Every once in a while.
and then the scrubbing bubble ghosts, and Legolas Cirque du Soleil around some Oliphants.
Yeah. Scrubbing bubble ghost.
They just scrubbed over the whole toilet bowl of a city, and then it was clean.
Jackson has a cheesy side. He's not. The only thing that made people think that Peter Jackson was this great director was Lord of the Rings. But everything he ever did is goofy.
Yeah. Yep.
Just goofy. He loves goofy stuff. He has a Michael Bay aspect to his personality, and it doesn't belong anywhere in Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
And he put it there, and ever since he put it there, the new fans who only saw the movies, who are used to all of the fantasy that over all of these years that's been derived from Tolkien, the D&D players that want their fireballs and their sword fights, got it in Tolkien, in which it never was. He just cut away from battles. Battles, I don't know, I guess it happened, but we're on a different chapter.
I got hit in the head by a stone. I went out for the Battle of Five Armies.
No, there was none of the sword fighting nonsense in the books. That was part of their charm, was these are not action books. Yeah. And Peter Jackson put the action in them, and I think that's the key to that decline.
But when the action was done well, and it was in service of the story,
in the service of the story, but he put action in it that was in no way in service of the story. Still,
this is the Legolas.
This is Legolas shield surfing.
Surfing
This is the elephants. Zoom, zoom, swing, swing. Other than that, the action was so good because it felt gritty and realistic, and you got shot by an arrow, and that's it. You weren't going to live. Yeah. Like that's that.
And it would have those moments of like Boromir's death where you're like, okay, right? Yeah. Like it's impactful. War of the Rohirrim has death in it. Good bit. Let's talk about the character deaths that mattered. Right. You have Freka. You have the two sons of Helm, which is Hama and I can't remember what the other character, what the other son's name is. But the two sons. You have Wolf's death, but kind of a big baddie death at the end. You have the advisor's death, but I don't know what his name was supposed to be. You had a couple other deaths, but like the ones that should matter should be Freka and the two sons for the purposes of building the story. Yeah. And I was shocked at how devoid of drama the moment of Helm punching Freka and him dying was. Like it was a flurry of punches from Freka, and then a quick whap from Helm, and there was not a shot of his fist clenching. There was not like a build up. There was not even like the swing that made it look real hard.
I mean, you never even saw his arm fully extended.
Yeah,
it was like
it kind of went across screen, right?
Yeah.
He throws a flurry of punches.
Oh no, this is too good.
And then there's like no build up to the big punch, right? Yeah. So Freka gets more interesting things happening here.
Your daughter will control your
And the lips weren't even talking there. Yeah, right there. Boom. Not like you don't even get like a shot of his fist clenching or anything. And so all the drama sucked that drama out of the air.
They just got the pacing all wrong.
And then it's like he threw that punch not with the intention of damaging him, right? And he's like, get up and fight. It's like,
he's dead.
There is a connotation that Helm murders him in the original. Like, he intended to kill him.
I only struck him the once.
Oh no, I regret my decision.
You all saw.
You all saw. Literally two of them in the field. He murdered him.
Look.
And, granted, like the whole scenario they set up is different from the source, but like even that just was devoid of drama, and it sucked the drama out of that moment. Where it really could have had that build up to that moment. And the thing is, most people going into this film, frankly, if they're going to have any excitement for it, are going to know what the story of Helm Hammerhand is anyway.
Oh, I feel like nobody that watched this film knew what the story of Helm.
Well, because everyone who went and watched the film was suckered into it. But like that would be the reason to go watch it. And so it's not about what happened. It's about the build up to what happened, and they didn't do it. And the way they did it is actually, frankly, for an audience of people who would be surprised. He killed him with one punch? What?
Your daughter will come crawling on her knees, begging my son to marry her before the end.
I think that was a bad decision. The two sons dying, you get one with an arrow to the neck, and it was, he was having this triumphant moment, and it was a return, and it could have been impactful if you knew anything about that character other than him being mildly brooding for like 30 seconds before.
Yeah.
They spent a little bit more time with the other son who played the harp, and that was kind of like, that was his character.
Yeah.
And he got to have almost got to have a moment where he like stood his ground or something, but it really just resulted in him being kidnapped.
Yeah, they just cut away. Like, he didn't even loose his arrow. What the hell?
They didn't even show him get killed. That was technically off screen, right?
What have you done?
He just riddled them with arrows right from there, maybe. A little shot.
Yeah, why is that not happening?
I mean, they're close enough to yell to each other, so.
You will know what it means to be alone, as I was.
It's a really good point. Why are they just not launching arrows at them right now? And again, the lack of that character development means that we don't really feel it, but Helm is supposed to feel it. It is his son's, and it's supposed to be the thing that ignites his insanity.
I mean, I don't know if they were trying to... Once again, it's such a weird mixed bag. I don't know if they were trying to not show you something gruesome. They show a guy get an arrow through the neck, but then they won't show the other son getting
They showed
killed.
a hand getting cut off at one point.
But then Wolf says, just leave the corpse there to rot. I'm telling you right now, the chance that they missed to constantly show that decaying day after day, like Helm has to see his son slowly, features sinking in until and the birds picking at him, that should frickin' have set him off. But instead they just covered him in a tarp and we never saw it again.
Yeah, exactly. And instead you burn all your time with all this other stuff that doesn't matter. They could have spent every frame they could have done doing exactly what you said.
Yeah.
They instead spent on the backstory of a wedding dress.
I feel like this is a constant problem that Rohan has, is they don't put any supplies in their fortress.
Yeah.
And in this case, had only one old lady doing inventory. That whole story about the origin of the wedding dress, why'd it have to be so generic? Like, there was once a lady who died before she could wear her dress of a fever. The end. Like,
I'm not even sure what the purpose of any of that was.
Yeah.
Does it come into play later?
Yeah, she's gonna put on that dress.
And
for
something
purposes.
He's been to the siege tower. He needs
But
to
so they
finish
need to establish why there was a dress.
Okay.
But why couldn't they give the lady a name and a story? Like,
if you remember, there are big plot holes
in this.
and
I mean, it's just a really weird, generic tale for that old lady,
It is not easy to hold
bookkeeper
on
to.
when an ill wind
does it
blows.
matter for the person why she wears the dress?
I mean, why couldn't it have been her dress, and that's why she's been there for 40 years? She could be Miss Haversham. Okay?
Yet still the siege held fast.
Which, just so that they could have a ready-made wedding dress. They could have, instead of having a ready-made wedding dress, they could have gone to all the people in soon-to-be-named Helm's Deep and been like, make me a wedding dress out of whatever white fabric and scraps you have that we can put together.
Or just find a wedding dress.
Finding a wedding dress.
Oh, like they're digging through the stores anyway.
Yeah.
Oh, here's the treasure room.
Well, I mean, that's kind of what they did, and then they just made a little story.
But they had this weird backstory. I mean, they spent all this time with it, and it was like, that wasn't really in service of anything, and it could have been in service of building up Helm's mental decline, right? It is the execution that failed to do all the things that should be obvious.
Why wasn't it the wedding dress of Helm's wife from his wedding? Why would that not be the story? You see what I mean? Like, it's easy, it makes sense why it's there.
Well, I would actually say, why not have it be Hera's wedding dress?
Like that they
Because there's an like so they very quickly were like, we're not doing the way it would be culturally in Tolkien's story, or even back in the 30s and 40s when Tolkien wrote a lot of this stuff.
Yeah.
Instead, we're going to modernize it. So she isn't going to marry a man. That's what she says it like 3 or 4 times, and she's very specific, a man, which is interesting. I'm not going to marry a man.
I do not want to marry you. I do not want to marry any man.
I feel like
You
the
asked my
writers
answer. You have it.
read Tolkien's little short story, and then they watched the movie Brave, and they thought, we can do it so much worse than both of these things.
You just got the entire spirit of what this film was going to go for in that statement of, I don't want to marry any man.
Yep.
There's actually a connotation, but I don't want to be the thing that, like, actually in this time and in the framing of Tolkien's work, that was exactly what they would want.
Right. Right. It's a very modernist perspective.
And very. Yeah. And the fact that it's like her decision and her dad's backing it up in a way, but like, it was supposed to just be between Helm and Freka here, right?
Yeah.
But you could have set up that there's an expectation she is going to get married, and like they're prepping it, even if they don't have someone for her to get married.
Because you would marry your daughters off. That's just how it worked. Like there's no ifs, ands, or buts.
You could have even done it with like, you could have done it where maybe it was meant to be an arranged marriage with Wolf,
right?
But when Freka comes in, he puts Helm off of it, so Helm says no. Like, that's a really quick and easy thing to do.
Yeah.
And you could even have this notion of maybe even, like, here, let's invent a slightly better film. Maybe even Hera and Wolf, because they were friends as kids, maybe they could have actually wanted a marriage, but because of, like, the political aspect of this, of Helm killing Freka and Wolf, rightfully so, vowing to kill Helm, now it puts them at odds, and it's an unrequited love, and now that's poisoned, and so then that wedding dress can become symbolic, like it was trying to be.
What if Wolf brought the wedding dress to present as a gift?
Yeah.
Like,
and it becomes this aspect that threads through, right?
Whoa! Whoa! Gravity boots.
Well, her dad jumped like 40 feet in the air at one point, so. And like I said, that's even making it a Hera-centric story where it's from her viewpoint. She is, in the source material, the inciting incident. Her presence in that story, unnamed, but her presence as an individual, Helm's daughter, is the reason he gets in a fight with Freka. And he kills him with a punch. And that leads to the war, and that leads to a bad timing, it leads to Helm's death, it leads to all this stuff. So I'm okay with that framing. Because whole thing is not because his dad was killed.
So yeah, it's really a moving target of vengeance. It's kind of like the nuclear apocalypse in Star Trek in 1997, maybe 20 years later. We don't know. It's a moving target.
But do it in a way that actually tells an interesting story with the relationships and the emotions behind it, instead of like, I'm just going to be the freewheeling, like, I don't want to be tied down by the chains of marriage and my role as a princess. Like, this has been done so many times, and it's so exhausting now that, frankly, if they hadn't done that, it would have been a breath of fresh air.
And it's so not acceptable within the context of the time and world. And if you're even going to play it that way, if you still want to go with that narrative, then you need to make her really reckless and really disobedient. You need to make her Merida from frickin' Brave. That girl looked like she just didn't want to settle down.
Or Eowyn, right? Like this is the other problem with this movie, is that they basically borrow every single story beat from the Rohan part of the story of Lord of the Rings, so much so that you are literally just like, oh, Helm is Theoden, his nephew is his
Yeah.
is his nephew in this case, but it's like literally banishing him, just like Eomer. You have Hera acting just like Eowyn.
The king has spoken.
It's also amazing how this echoes Eomer.
Yeah.
So exactly.
Value it or not.
See, now it just feels like it's the same story.
My brothers can defend their home, but yet I cannot.
This is literally like just the same story at this point.
Yeah.
This is
Yeah,
Theoden and Eowyn and Eomer.
Yeah.
Part of what is supposed to make Eowyn an interesting character is that she is bucking a trend.
Yeah.
No, she's actually just another in the long line of apparently the Rohirrim women who don't like to
Settle down.
or something, right? Like, and I again, this is the we got to modernize it, but it is one of those things where it actually cheapens the thing that was good before.
Yeah.
And that's the more than anything, if there's going to be the great sin of something like this, it's to cheapen the good thing.
Yeah.
Don't do that, right? Star Wars did that. Star Trek has done that. They have retroactively gone back, and instead of having Spock just be, in Star Trek, just another Vulcan,
Yeah.
no, he's got to now have the
He's the C-3PO of the series. He's missing. He's been there the whole time,
He's been
dilly-dallying with everything.
He's been recast four
Yeah,
times, and instead of just being like, oh no, the first officer of Discovery has to be his adopted sister for some reason.
Let's not talk about his brother, who we also know exists but didn't talk about.
Yeah.
For some reason,
Until
I thought he had a brother, guys. Where's the brother at?
Sometimes it's okay for it not to always loop back around to something. And this one, it just felt like whether they were borrowing a visual or borrowing a character or an element. And it wasn't because they were borrowing it from the world of Tolkien, but they were they just didn't have anything else to draw inspiration from. Maybe that's a rights thing as well, right?
Yeah.
They could only pull from Lord of the Rings. So what are we going to do to have interesting bad guys? Add Oliphants to it, right?
Yeah.
Give them green flames, which, by the way,
the green flame.
the green flames have more character development in this movie.
I wouldn't call it development, but they're certainly there the whole time, and I want to know about them.
Well, no, we know that they don't scare the Mumakil. We know that for some reason they're aligned with the bad guys.
Yeah.
Fire plays a really important role in this whole movie. I can't stop seeing the green flames now. Thanks.
Yeah, they're just everywhere, and I don't know why. I mean, am I missing something? Is there a Tolkien green flame thing I don't remember from any of the books? Like,
It's afraid of the fire!
how do you think those green flames work on the end of those tusks? Do you think those are lamps? Do you think there's oil in the tusks?
Yeah. You know what? I don't know. He just said they're afraid of fire.
Yeah.
They have fire on them.
But it's green, and
So
they
maybe
don't
they're not
recognize
afraid
it
of
as
it.
fire. Yeah.
We're beginning to uncover the story of
Right.
the story of the Green Flame is actually the most interesting character development thus
I
far.
know, this is really fascinating. Can elephants see green? I don't know. Is that a thing?
So wait. Metasode was rebuilt?
I was about to say, they're gonna have to rebuild it exactly the way it looked before.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. Huh.
Yeah.
Wonder if that's based on anything with source material. I don't think so. But okay. Interesting.
She thinks she's safe by
Green
the
flames,
rules.
Green flames, yeah.
She will let
But it is. It's just bizarre what all they just pulled random stuff from, and it just comes off feeling derivative instead of its own story.
It is very derivative.
And it could have been its own story told really well, even with the framing or the general plot line or the changes they made or the additions they made. They could pull it together in a slightly more cohesive way, but they had to choose what to
45
cut.
minutes shorter.
Yeah.
45 minutes shorter.
It needed to be an hour and a half at longest. I think it's 2 hours and 10, maybe something like that. I'm not certain the exact. It felt every minute of it. Goodness, like there was a legitimate good 10 minutes of this film, and it was when Helm was doing the things that he was supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
That was the good part of the film.
Yeah.
There were bits and pieces you could choose from where you say, that character design is interesting. That element of this character is interesting. They don't do anything with it, but it's at least interesting, right? It's pointing to the thing and saying, that's interesting. But I'll be honest, the fact that I was like, I kind of like the braid they did in Hera's hair means I'm bored to tears with everything else.
Yeah.
Right? That should have just been a general character design thing that I would have noticed the second or third time I watched, because I wanted to watch it that many times. I noticed it because there was nothing else to notice.
Yeah.
And it was like, well, at least they could have done like that. At least the character design had one redeeming element. Yeah.
The Shield Maiden girl, whose name I don't remember.
Yeah.
Her, I guess, servant.
Yeah.
Woman. There's something about her that I kept trying to figure out what it was that was familiar, and it's in the way the voice actress delivers the lines, but it's also in the way they draw her hair. She constantly reminds me of Molly Grew from The Last Unicorn. This means nothing. It's just this thing that keeps going through my head every time she talks. I think it's just the voice and the fact that she's got some scraggly hair and she's the older, kind of more worn character. But that made me like her, even though there's still nothing about her character that has any depth besides that they say that she's the last Shield Maiden.
Yeah. And there is a lot of telling instead of showing with it, right? Like, you have to take it.
Well, they keep coming in and narrating it randomly. I mean, just randomly.
Here's what I'm going to borrow a phrase, slapping a tickle here. Miranda Otto was a great casting for Éowyn.
Yeah.
I don't know a lot about her acting career, but she was good in Lord of the Rings movies. I think I've seen her in one other thing that was
my understanding was she wasn't an actress.
No, she's done other things, and she's done
Did she
things
do it
before, but
before?
she was very like unknown. A lot of the characters, a lot of the actors that were brought in were relative unknowns, or they were known local in New Zealand or Australia. And I think she was fantastic in the role for the most part. Maybe she was just phoning it in. Maybe that's what it was. She also can't roll her R's, so she would call Hera Hela a lot.
Her name was Hera, only daughter of Helm.
So I know that the narrator is Miranda Otto, right? Éowyn.
Yeah.
She tried to roll her R with Hera just then, and it came out Hela. Her name is Hela.
Hella.
Yeah.
Like, this movie is hella bad. You guys hella sick.
They were trying to make it sound like the narration at the opening of Lord of the Rings.
Which was Cate Blanchett.
Right. And they were trying to recreate that Cate Blanchett, dull, smooth, like placid tone that works. Those are not insulting things, but the way that she delivered that was with no excitement. But with a sense of gloom and foreboding. And I think they were just trying to do the same thing, and that's kind of what we got.
I'm saying this to basically say I felt like the narration performance was not very good. It just didn't come across as being like high quality. And look, a lot of the voice acting was fairly decent. Like Brian Cox is a great actor. Many of the voice actors, I kind of recognize them from something maybe.
The voice acting would have seemed better if it matched the faces that they were on.
Okay, but let's close our eyes and listen to the voice acting. I think it was generally good. Like, it was a general positive.
Well, yeah, but that's what I'm saying is, like, if you close your eyes and you just listen to this dialogue, you get more. But when you open your eyes and you see these glassy-eyed mannequins talking at each other or sometimes into space while vaguely in proximity to one another, that voice acting doesn't come through because that other part of your brain trying to interpret what you're seeing is getting this, like, oh, that voice is coming out of a mannequin. Like, that's the problem with the characters.
Yeah.
The girl is clever. She is up to something. Do not take the bait. I accept your challenge.
This guy's like the worst advisor. He's the Lieutenant Worf of advisors.
No, I mean, there's nothing wrong with their delivery of lines, honestly.
Yeah.
It's just that, you can sound sad, but when the character doesn't look sad, it doesn't come across right.
So ultimately, what this comes down to is it's not really rewatchable.
No, it's long.
It's
too.
way too long. It's not the right approach to telling the story of Helm. It's not a particularly compelling film, and it isn't bad per se. It's just so painfully mediocre. Because again, a bad film you can enjoy.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
If it's
Mediocre
truly
is the
bad.
worst.
But mediocre is the worst,
Mhm.
and it's very disappointing that this is the direction that Middle Earth-based film media
Anything,
has been
yeah.
going, whether it's TV or otherwise. Maybe there's still some holdouts in video game land, but
And now we have two competing Middle Earths. That's just weird.
that's also very strange.
yeah.
It worked out for bringing Spider-Man into the MCU very briefly, I suppose. So maybe there's a light at the end of this tunnel
Yeah.
somewhere. But I'll be honest, I have really rapidly gotten to the point where maybe I am just an old curmudgeon, and I rewatch old stuff now.
Oh yeah.
You
all I do.
know, my marathons of Lord
Yeah.
of the Rings are still going to be prepended by the Rankin Bass
Yeah,
Hobbit
yeah.
cartoon.
Yeah.
Just like having a Bugs Bunny cartoon before your feature film of Casablanca, you're gonna watch the Hobbit cartoon as a preface for watching the Lord of the Rings
Rankin
films.
Bass Hobbit is the best version of the Hobbit, and it is. It has its flaws. It's very quick, but the Hobbit's a short book. It is, I would say, near perfect as
Yeah.
far as being the Hobbit.
Yeah,
It's the Hobbitiest Hobbit there is.
It kind of feels like a children's story. It's a little bit more fanciful. It's got some comical moments. It doesn't add much of anything to the story. It certainly doesn't subtract much of anything.
Yeah.
It has the moments it needs to have. I was always there's always a part of me that wants to look at anything that is of an IP that I love that says, is there anything salvageable?
Right.
Right. I look at the Hobbit films, and there's been fan edits out there, but there's not something
Yeah.
salvageable, right? Not to talk too much about the Hobbit films, but but my absolute favorite part of the Hobbit, and it's in the Rankin Bass version, is when Bard pulls out the Black Arrow, and he has this speech about the Black Arrow.
Mhm.
I've launched you many times, and I've always recovered you, right? And there's this backstory to that you don't really know,
Yeah.
but it's like, that's cool. In the Hobbit films that Peter Jackson made, he used his son as like a tripod for a ballista bow to launch a giant javelin. And that was the Black Arrow. And he didn't say his speech even. So there's not a single thing in that moment you can salvage.
Black Arrow, you've never failed me, and I've always recovered you. I had you from my father, and he from of old. Ever you came from the forges of the true king under the mountain. Go now and speed well.
Stay still, son. Stay still.
Lake Town was way more metropolitan and technologically advanced than I expected.
Yeah.
I really feel like the guys at Rankin Bass got the vibe of a small village on a lake.
Yeah, small fishing village.
Village
Did
on a
some-
lake, yeah.
Did some trade and drank
Just
some
to
wine.
drink some, just to pass the wine barrels through.
But that's the Hobbit films.
Yeah.
But, and I think about this with, the reason I'm bringing it up is there anything salvageable with Rohirrim? There's 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And even that is, right in the middle of it, you have this giant frost troll
Yeah.
that kind of like,
Yeah. You get that weird jumping scene, and
Oh yeah, he
then
jumps
we just
40
get
feet
him
in the
just
air.
like punching the thing in the stomach.
It was like Little Mac fighting Mike Tyson.
Yeah, that is exactly
punch out.
that is the apt description.
Good lord. Fucking going Super Saiyan.
He jumped really high. What is this thing supposed to be?
I think some sort of troll. Frost troll, I guess. If such a thing is supposed to exist.
And so it kind of, well, I guess not in the middle. It begins with the Frost Troll. Helm's cool moment begins with that, and then it ends with him frozen holding the hammer aloft.
Yeah.
And it was just the worst.
I can't. I mean, you know, you're talking to a guy who once re-edited Will Smith's Wild Wild West. And I love to the idea that you can fix something that's wrong, that you can go back in time and you can make it right. And the only way that I could fix Will Smith's The Wild Wild West was to take out everything he said by turning it into a silent film and rewriting the script. Because it's appropriate for the film era. It's steampunk. It should be a black and white silent film.
I was really looking forward to the story of Home Hammerhand.
I just wanted to. I even tried to just match the frame rates by just taking the whole thing down to like 12 and 10 frames per second, and it still just doesn't look right. Yeah. But then again, the problem is those scenes with the CG backgrounds just don't look right. Yeah. Because you have your flat animation that's not turning with the camera.
Even if it's technical aside, though, what are you going to do? What are you going to do with the story?
Yeah.
What are you going to do with the story? So little of it is spent on the characters that actually matter for what you wanted to see. That, I mean, you can't really salvage Helm Hammerhand's story out of this.
By her hand, many great deeds were done.
But do not look for tales of her in the old songs.
Don't look for tales, but let's tell the story. All right, but anyway. There are none. There are none except for this one.
Brilliant writing. Yeah. Really good. Really good. Allow me to tell you a story that no one remembers.
Okay, wait a minute. So what if we take the wolf coming for the marriage and we put it first, okay? And then we do the scene where Hera is riding all footloose and fancy-free, feeding the eagles after Freka gets killed. And then we just cut to her being in the forest and kidnapped with none of the Oliphants and swamp monsters. And we just take all of that out. See, now we've streamlined it.
We've streamlined it.
And we didn't say, oh, he didn't let his daughter out anymore because things were scary. And she's just wandering about like she does, and they nab her.
This kind of looks like a giant chicken right now.
Chicken Boo, what's the matter with you? She's not going to ride an eagle, is she?
I mean, I am totally okay with them embracing the awkwardness of cool-looking birds on the ground. You know? Oh, look at that. Look how cool that bird is in the sky. Look at it walk. It looks dumb. It's so doofy.
But you still don't have the story of Helm and any of that. Like, you still have to burden yourself with like all the battle scenes that were not interesting.
So, because this animation was sometimes just 5 frames per second, we can literally draw the 2 missing frames of that punch. Okay? We can literally draw them and insert them into the film so it looks good.
It already feels like more effort than it's worth at this point. And the one Mad Max drummer.
Yeah, I was about to say, like, freaking.
Wait, what's gonna happen to the drummer?
Yeah.
bit of a bend.
High school science project, though, they used the right shape, right? They did the triangle thing.
Yeah, again, I'm disappointed that this is the direction that Tolkien-based media is going. We have now gone almost 30 years from when the Lord of the Rings films came out, first started coming out, right? 2001, we are now 2025, so we're 25 years into this. That's a long time to go without feeling like a new piece of media has really captured the spirit again.
I guess I feel like being in the year 2025, I don't think we should be watching anything, any Tolkien movies or media at all, because we're supposed to be living in Blade Runner right now, okay? And nobody's watching Tolkien movies in Blade Runner.
Well, there you go.
They should just be an old book on a shelf, okay? I want some gatekeeping back.
I just want good media.
Yeah.
Instead, what we got was a mildly interesting popcorn bucket.
We will paint the dawn red with the blood of our foes!
Oh, there it is.
There's the popcorn bucket. All right.
Worst popcorn bucket ever.
Yeah, rather small.
Yeah, I mean, I don't... He's supposed to, like, pour it in there and... Great swag, though. Terrible, terrible popcorn bucket. Great swag.
Hey, did that Stardew Valley Hobbit game ever come out?
No, I think it's still delayed.
Still coming? Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't know. That could be fun.
maybe.
Cottage core Hobbit game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I said, maybe video games.
Really,
hey, high recommendation for Lord of the Rings Online. It is still going strong with very few players.
I really enjoyed playing the Shadow of War and Shadow of Mordor.
Yeah.
Really fun to play. I mean, silly video game mechanics with goofy
very loose with the lore.
Yeah, I mean, just kind of resurrected every time you die.
If you want to pull some really good games out, the ones that are based on the films, both the Two Towers and Return of the King action games were both a lot of fun. They had the Third Age, which was a JRPG style one, and even though it was very derivative, I loved that game.
Yeah, I heard it was really good.
It was a lot of fun. And then War in the North was extremely good, and it is based in the Peter Jackson film universe.
Yeah.
But it tells its own story. It's the story of basically heroes going into Angband, which is in Angmar, north. So while all the ring is going south, they're going north to fight the Witch King, basically. And it was legitimately good. And it was very cinematic.
Yeah.
And it's a great example of how you can, maybe not perfect, don't get me wrong, but how you can make a story in the Peter Jackson universe and not have to tie it all back all the time to the pre-existing things that are going on. So I think that media does exist. Yeah. It's old at this point. And I think, unfortunately, in the modern age, people have lost the ability and the appetite for telling a Tolkien-esque story.
Yeah.
I think they think it's too old. I think they think it has values that don't align with the nebulous modern audience. And I think that, quite frankly, I don't think Hollywood has the talent anymore. I think that just how indie films seem to now do better than Hollywood films, even in box office, you're going to have to get an auteur director, kind of like Peter Jackson was way back then, to go do something really unique and interesting.
Well, I mean, but again, it was a weird one because nobody knew who Peter Jackson was before Lord of the Rings. He was not Steven Spielberg. He was not anybody knew. He had a couple of movies under his belt that some of them just cult classical gore horror, right? You know, like you would have thought this is not the right guy to direct this. This is the wrong guy to direct this. This is what they basically what they said was we hired Troma to make Lord of the Rings, and then they did a bang up job.
Yeah.
I feel like we have so much talent. Like we were just talking about, Haunting of Hill House. Talent.
Yeah.
Talent. I'd let them guys make something in Lord
But
of the
they're
Rings.
not being given access to the IP.
But yeah, they're no.
You
they're,
get
yeah.
Alex Kurtzman making
Oh,
Star
God
Trek,
Damn it, Alex Kurtzman.
right?
Yeah.
You're getting the wrong people
Yeah.
that are getting hired under this. That's why I said Hollywood, not filmmakers.
Yeah.
Hollywood does not have the talent. All right. Well, do
Yeah.
we have anything else to say about War of the Rohirrim?
It's forgettable. Too
Yeah.
long. Don't watch it.
Yeah. Thank you for forcing me
Forcing
to
you,
watch
yeah.
this so we could make a video.
That means I watched it twice.
Yeah. What's wrong with you?
I don't know. It just as we started this conversation, I realized I just didn't want to talk about it. I was just like, we kept going. I kept trying to get us on tangents because I realized I just didn't want to talk about
You
this movie.
put me up to this.
I know.
We could have been
I'm
talking about any
anything.
number of things. The reason we're doing this video is because you and I would sit around and talk about things we love, and you were like, you know what we should do? We should talk about a thing you're going to hate.
Yeah. Well, that's because you talk smack about it without even knowing how far in it you weren't.
Well,
now we know.
I guess thanks for that.
You're very welcome. We're gonna have to do this again and talk about something else.
Yeah, the problem is that things that hate watching is much more popular, gets more subscribers.
That's okay. At this point, I'm old and I'm salty, and I think I hate everything.
Oh, there you go.
Let's talk about Star Trek.
Do you really want to talk about Star Trek?
I really want to talk about Star Trek.
You're gonna make me watch Picard, aren't you?
Oh God, I wouldn't do that to you. No, absolutely not. In fact, I believe my best advice would be, it doesn't exist. Just pretend it doesn't exist.
Okay.
No. That's hateful. That's a hateful thing.
Okay. Well, at least I know I don't have that in my future.
If you watch any of it, just go to the third season, the one where they should have started, and it's still not that great.
Yeah.
But Lord.
Yes, an unexpected invitation.
Of course. Adventure beckons.
Is she going to the Shire?
Is she going to have an unexpected journey? Will she get there and back again? Perhaps it's just a bit of a holiday.
Do you remember these phrases that are used throughout?
Should your king ever need you?
Okay, well.
Yep, that's it. I'm going to take my War of the Rohirrim merchandise.
Yeah, get it out of here. See you later, Sean.